Good morning, or good evening, rather. Welcome to vlog number 26. And today we're going to continue on with the question which we were answering in vlog number 25. The growing independence of masculinity and systemization of ego consciousness in early mankind manifests itself as the moon god Osiris, who we see here. And I believe this one is from the tomb of Tutankhamun. It can be inferred that Osiris, in his early form, is a sun lover of the Great Mother, as the moon is a spiritual symbol of the Mother archetype. He is the man god whom shifts pre-dynastic Egypt from a matriarchal to a patriarchal society, from a stratum ruled by the laws of the unconscious, instinct, and the inscrutable powers which preside over growth and development, to one ruled by laws of the selfish, needy, and conscious ego. The passions of Osiris indicates an archetypal stage of transformation or ascension where the ego is no longer the seasonal vessel of a lower mechanical nature used by the Great Mother in fertility ritual, but a stable and indestructible power of centriversion and spiritual generation. In the widely accepted version of the myth, Osiris was once a king of Egypt who granted the people the gifts of agriculture and peace and taught them how to respect one another. It is he who is credited with having civilized and cultured the Egyptians. The 28 years of his rule is a clear analogy to the 28 days of the moon's life. In this lower form, Osiris is the animated principle of vegetation, and thus his portrayal with green or black skin in bas-reliefs. There you go. This one is from the Temple of Seti, I believe. I've seen this one. He maintains this role until he is murdered by Seth, his jealous brother, who throws the coffin containing his dead body into the Nile. Seth is the archetypal antagonist who represents the destructive force of the Great Mother, against which the patriarchal energy or impulse must liberate itself. Isis, widow and sister of Osiris, retrieves the body from Byblos in Lebanon, where it had come to rest, but Seth finds it whilst out hunting one day and hacks it into 14 pieces, scattering the parts all over Egypt. The dismemberment of the corpse is a metaphor for the insemination of the earth, a feminine vessel with grain, and the 14 pieces which it is hacked into allude to the parts of the moon that are broken off during its period of waning. Isis, together with her sister Nephthys, search for the parts of her husband-brother and find all but the phallus, which had been swallowed by an Oxyrhynchus fish. The sisters proceed to replace the lost phallus with a wooden one, and then mummify the body, and we can see that in plate 14a. So, it's the first one. You can see it here. Subsequently, they turn themselves into swallows and beat their wings to give him the numinous breath of life, which is the second one. And these are all from the Osirian chapel in Dendera, these depictions. The wooden phallus is a symbol of eternal potency, remaining intact until the death of Osiris' successor. It is the sun lover who eternally fertilizes the earth mother. He is eventually resurrected under the utterance of magic spells by Isis, denoting the crystallization of the anima from the mother archetype. Here, the archetypal feminine extricates itself from the grip of the terrible mother, and Osiris emerges from his cocoon of sleep not as a lower earthly king, but as a reconstituted cosmic god who is the Western god of the underworld and the lord of the heaven, the great father of all. So in that we can see that in C. He's awoken here. His resurrection is also a metaphor for the germination of the grain that was dispersed upon dismemberment. Now the Egyptian pharaonic line of fathers and sons rests upon the spiritual phenomenon of their identity, where every Osiris was once Horus, and every Horus will become Osiris, which is in plate D. That's a symbol, that's in the middle is Osiris as the Jed Piler, kind of like a symbol of indestructibility. They are two functioning aspects of spiritual generation, where ego reaches self-consciousness and the matriarchal stratum is diminished to a lower reproductive vessel whose function is merely to beget one from the other. So what came last into being, soul or spiritual consciousness, now becomes first, from which the lower matriarchal stage issued by emanation. Evidence for the affluence of the Hathor-Isis cult can be seen in the great temple of Dendera, which serves to demonstrate the yearly cycle of the sun. Its south wall is a testimony to the survival of the ancient matriarchal stratum in the late Egyptian view of creation, and I will show you that artifact in my copy of the Monuments of Egypt, the Napoleonic edition. So this is, let's see if we can, because it's a fold-out page. So this is what it looks like. If anyone's been to Dendera, or to the Temple of Dendera, they would have no doubt seen it. In the center of the bas-relief is the head of Hathor, which we can see, give you a smaller one now, right there. There she is. Whose frontal representation shows that she is at the center of worship. Her body is symbolically buried in the earth, as the uroboric womb is a lower territory of fertility, and her head is crowned by a small ring of cobra heads called a modius, as a reminder of the animus of her uroboric hybrid nature. The crown is topped by a pair of cow horns in between a sun disk. If the cow horns infer divine motherhood, and the sun disk denotes creation from light, then by analogy Hathor is unmistakably the mother of creation. The systematic arrangement of the male and female deities of Dendera that spring from the Great Mother are a figurative depiction of the schism of opposites. Male and female, light and dark, heaven and earth, and order and chaos, which proliferate from unconscious origins and conclude that cognition is only possible through their discrimination. A conscious identification with one, opposite, means leaving the other in the unconscious mind, and this primal loss means the loss of wholeness. Wholeness, of course, being a concept entombed only by the Great Mother. Thus, the bas-relief is implying the expulsion of the masculine ego from the uroboric Garden of Eden. The mirror images of Hathor-Isis as the Good Mother, wearing the combined red crown of Lower Egypt and white crown of Upper Egypt of the two empires of the world, are followed by the solar gods Atum, Ra and Horus the Elder on the eastern flank, and Hathor in adult form, Osiris Onofris, and Horus of Edfu on the western flank, which Osiris Onofris is here. These solar deities each represent a particular phase in the cycle of birth, death, and resurrection that the sun suffers, and their purpose is to emphasize the eternity of Hathor as regeneratrix of her own father, husband, son, and her sovereignty over time. Indeed, the great father Osiris Onofris, who was there, that's him there, is dwarfed and represented but once on the western flank. The last two deities of that wing are Isis and the child god Hathor. So they're here. That's Isis and that's little Hathor there. Probably it's a bit difficult to see it here. Balanced by the figures of Hathor as Good Mother and the child god Ichi on the right, where Hathor, a form of Harpocrates, and Ichi are gods of the dawning sun. So the two little children, or the two little child gods, represent the dawning sun, the sun at the beginning of its course through the sky. They are both phallic consorts of Hathor-Isis, denoting the infantile stage of ego consciousness, where Heliopolitan solar or masculine theology is thrust into the background as images of mother and son are repeated under variant names. There is no father. There is only the Great Mother.